Welcome back, fellow cardboarders. It's been a while, but I finally got to it and made the video 49 of you voted for, which is my spin on the Slime Against Humanity card from the Karlov Manor set. On this channel we had several ideas of how to spin this deck, but a Pauper version was one we settled on. So we chose the partners Slurrk, the All-Ingesting and Tormod, the Desecrator. We're gonna look at the whole deck list and I'm gonna walk you through my thought process while building this deck. And now it's time for Think outside the deck box. Before we look at the commanders themselves, maybe let's look at the Slime Against Humanity first. It's a 2 mana and 1 green sorcery which creates a 0/0 green ooze token with trample and puts X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the number of Slimes Against Humanity I own in my graveyard and in exile. And it also counts oozes, but I don't think I actually have any oozes in my deck itself. And this is why it's called a Slimes Against Humanity deck. We are allowed to play any number of Slimes Against Humanity, and I put in 27 in my main deck. I wanted to put like 30 in, but I had to make some cuts and I only found the option to cut some of these slimes since I just couldn't find anything else I wanted to cut. Now let's take a look at Slurrk, the All-Ingesting. It is a 5 mana and 1 green legendary ooze, which enters the battlefield with 5 1/1 counters. It's a 0/0 by itself. And whenever Slurrk or another creature dies, if it had +1/+1 counters on it, I put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature that already has a +1/+1 counter on it, and it has partner. And a wonderful friend to Slurrk is Tormod, the Desecrator. 3 mana, 1 black, a 4/2 legendary zombie wizard. And whenever any of my cards leave my graveyard, I create a tapped 2/2 black zombie. So, and again, if you look at the Slimes Against Humanity, they also count exiled Slimes Against Humanities. So some of my cards will regularly exile some of these cards since they still count towards the Slimes Against Humanity counter to add more counters on my Slimes Against Humanity when I cast them. And Tormod will also create tapped 2/2 black zombies. So this is just the general idea of how I want to spin this deck. So we have +1/+1 counters, we have tokens, and this whole deck is a Pauper deck. And let's see how well we can build it. So this can always be more powerful if you're not playing Pauper, but I also like this challenge and we like to build unique decks on this channel. And building a Pauper deck is quite unique since you are quite restricted with the cards you can put in, and I do like those challenges. So let's first look at the card draw category. We are playing 9 card draw cards. We're playing classics like the Knight's Whisper and the Sign in Blood, which just simply for 2 mana let us draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. If we want to be politically or mean, we can also let an opponent draw cards with Sign in Blood. Then we have cards like Deadly Dispute, Fanatical Offering and Village Rites, which all let us sacrifice a creature or sometimes an artifact as well. And then again I draw 2 cards. The Deadly Dispute gets us a treasure token, the Fanatical Offering a map token, and the Village Rites simply costs 1 less. The Yavimaya Elder is a wonderful creature which we can sack or block with, and then it dies probably and lets us search for 2 basic lands and let us put them into our hand. And if we sacrificed it, we also draw another card. So this one for 1 card gives us 3 cards, and that is really nice. I really enjoy playing the Elder. The Deepwood Denizen is a repeatable card draw, which in the best case lets us for 1 green and tap draw a card each turn if we have enough +1/+1 counters on our creatures. So that is a really nice inclusion. The Siphon Mind lets our opponents all discard 1 card and we draw up to 3 cards if we have 3 opponents that still have cards in their hand. Very nice card in my opinion, wonderful Pauper card, and also counts towards removal, but since it draws us more cards, I included it there. And lastly, we're playing the Dark Dabbing
Am I dabbing right? This is a dab.
The inside joke
this is
for
a dab.
This game.
which regenerates a creature. Useful if we have a big ooze or one of our commanders or important creatures, for example, like the Deepwood Denizen, we can regenerate it, draw a card, and if we have the spell mastery, so 2 or more instant sorcery cards, which is not hard since we're playing almost 40 sorceries in this deck with the Slimes Against Humanity, and a 13 instants, we're playing more than 50 cards which are spells, like instants and sorceries. So Spellmaster is not hard to achieve. If we have this Spell Mastery, we regenerate all our creatures. So if an opponent plays a board wipe and we'd lose many of our creatures, we can just instantly cast Dark Dabbing. It replaces itself by letting us draw a card and resave our whole board. So that is wonderful. Next up, Ramp. We're playing the classics like Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, Farseek, Nature's Lore, Rampant Growth, 3 Visits, Sakura Tribe Elder. All of these should be well known. If not, you can take a moment and stop the video to read through the individual cards. And lastly, we're playing Far Wanderings, which is a sorcery some people might not know. And it costs 2 and a green, a sorcery which fetches us a basic land tapped onto the battlefield. But if we have the Threshold, which means 7 or more cards in our graveyard, we can actually fetch for 3 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. So that's a wonderful ramp. Getting 3 lands for 3 mana, such a wonderful card. And should be played in more decks in my opinion. Next up, Removal. We're playing the wonderful modular card Return to Nature, which always has a wonderful target. If we are desperate or feeling cocky, we could even use it to exile one of our cards from our graveyard to have a Tormod trigger and get a zombie token again. Maybe we want to do that from time to time. Similarly, the Relic of Progenitus could exile a card from our opponent's graveyard, but we could also create a zombie by exiling one of our Slimes Against Humanity or useless sorceries that we don't need. And for just 1 mana, it replaces itself, exiles all cards from all graveyards. We don't mind, Slimes Against Humanities are still counted towards our next slime we're casting. So a wonderful removal card. We're playing Snuff Out as well. Let's hope this gets reprinted in the next set of Modern Horizons 3, so the price is going down again. If you still have copies and are worried if it gets reprinted and they are abundant and you have too many in your home, maybe you want to sell them. Non-financial advice, of course. We are playing 2 Delve cards, the Tasigur's Cruelty, which has Delve, and the Death Rattle, which has Delve as well. While the Death Rattle destroys a non-green creature, which can't be regenerated, the Tasigur's Cruelty lets our opponent discard, all of our opponents discard 2 cards. So these can be quite mean. Then we're playing 2 single removal cards like Lignify and Oubliette, which turns either one of our opponent's creatures into a 0/4 tree that does not have any abilities left, and Oubliette, which just permanently phases out a creature until Oubliette leaves the battlefield. 2 board wipes. Yes, there are board wipes in Pauper, Pestilence and Crypt Rats. Both of them let us pay any mana into them and then have them deal X damage to each player and each creature for each black mana that was spent. Speaking about board wipes, we already had Dark Dabbing, which would save our whole board from standard board wipes, sadly not from Crypt Rats or Pestilence, but the casual Austere Command or Supreme Verdict.
Supreme got a board of zombies pumped with a reaper. I do not stress, I just cast a sweeper. Anything in life that I find concerning, I do not address, I just Supreme Verdict.
And we're also playing Wrap in Vigor, which also just simply regenerates each of our creatures. Then we have some few +1/+1 counter synergies like the Ivy Lane Denizen, which says whenever a green creature enters the battlefield under my control, I may put a +1/+1 counter onto any of my creatures. So we could make one of our oozes really, really big. We could make itself quite big to protect it from Crypt Rats or Pestilence as well. So you will find a useful target. You could also use it on your creatures that don't have +1/+1 counters, so that Slurrk, if one of our creatures die, can distribute even more +1/+1 counters. You see there are some really nice synergies hidden in the deck, which I bet you will find even more throughout playing this deck. Secondly, we have Master Chef, which is a background. Both of our partners have the ability that when they enter with an additional +1/+1 counter. And whenever any of my other creatures enter the battlefield, they also enter with an additional +1/+1 counter. So in this case, Slurrk will give +1/+1 counters to every creature that has +1/+1 counters when any of our creatures die. With Master Chef out, all of our creatures will have +1/+1 counters, and we will get even more throughout the game while this is around. We have some graveyard interaction for Tormod. Crawling Infestation will regularly mill us at the beginning of our upkeep. Yes, we want to do that. We're not playing that many creatures, I think like 9, but if we hit one of them, we get a 1/1 insect. This only triggers once, but for example, in combination with Dredge, we can hit it even during our opponent's turn. If we want to draw a card at instant speed, we could just Dredge instead and hit one of our creatures as well and get a 1/1 insect at our opponent's turn as well. And with the Dredge ability, Tormod will also trigger and get us another 2/2 zombie onto the battlefield. The Stinkweed Imp will be a nice blocker since it kind of has Death Touch, so whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, it destroys that creature. And then it dies, and then we Dredge again, get another zombie. You get the idea. Rotten Reunion is a wonderful instant card for 1 black. We can exile any card in any graveyard. Most of the time we will exile one of our Slimes Against Humanity. We will get a Tormod trigger and a 2/2 zombie, and then it creates another 2/2 zombie with Decayed. And it has flashback, so when we flash it back, we also get a Tormod trigger, we exile something, another Tormod trigger, and we get a black zombie. So this one is a wonderful zombie generator. Don't think I want to remove that from the deck and rather keep it included. We're also playing some Recursion. As you heard, we might lose some of our creatures in between. We're not playing that many, and the creatures that we have we might want to keep. We have Feign Death, which will save a creature from dying, but with Tormod out we also get a 2/2 zombie as well, since it will return to the battlefield from the graveyard. And it also gets a +1/+1 counter, so this also synergizes well with Slurrk if it dies again. Another mill card is the Grapple with the Past, which mills us by 3 and then returns any creature or land card from our graveyard. Very useful. We have the Undertaker, which lets us discard any of our cards and return a creature from our graveyard to our hand. And lastly, we play Reclaim, which will put any of our graveyard cards on top of our library for us to draw later on. So many of these are kind of like joker cards for our best creatures or cards in our graveyard. We're playing 2 finishers, the classic Tainted Strike if we have a 10/10 or bigger Slime Against Humanity. Don't forget they have Trample as well. If they let it through, we are gonna kill one player with a single hit and they will not see it coming. And again, the Slimes have Trample. Undercity Uprising for 4 mana can be a finisher as well. All my creatures get Death Touch and we even fight any of our opponent's creatures. And Trample and Death Touch is just a brutal combo since we just need 1 single damage to kill any of our opponent's creatures that block. The rest of the damage will go through. So we're gonna kill everything in our way that blocks and deal a whole bunch of damage with this wonderful sorcery. Now lastly, our land base. And I hope you enjoyed this video so far. Do consider subscribing to the channel to support it. Leave a like, comment, all the good stuff. For our utility lands, we are playing 2 cycle lands, the Barren Moor and the Tranquil Thicket. If we have too many lands, we can just cycle them for the next card on our deck. Bojuka Bog, just simply for more removal to be able to exile any player's graveyard. We could even play it on ourselves to get another zombie, so don't forget that. Even a single card in our graveyard with Tormod out would be enough to get another zombie. So if none of our opponents would play any graveyard interaction, we could just simply do it on ourselves. Classic Command Tower. Then the Forge of Heroes, which should be a newer card. I did not know until I built this deck. So it creates a colorless mana, or we can tap it to choose a commander that enters the battlefield this turn, and we put a +1/+1 counter on it. If it's a planeswalker, put a loyalty counter on it, but we don't play any of those. Haunted Fengraf will give us a random creature card from our graveyard. We're not playing that many, so most of the time we will get the exact creature we want. And well, Tormod is happy about that. and we'll get another zombie. Haunted Mire as well as the Woodland Chasm will be fetchable dual lands for our ramp cards like 3 Visits or Nature's Lure, so just to be able to fix some of our mana. Speaking of those 2 ramp cards, we're also playing Witch's Cottage, which is a swamp as well and therefore rampable, fetchable for ramp cards that look for basic land types. This one enters the battlefield untapped if I have 3 or more other swamps, and if it does, we put a creature card from our graveyard on top of our library and make Tormod happy. Similarly, the Mortuary Mire, it enters the battlefield tapped and has the same effect. It puts a creature from our graveyard on top of our library for a free zombie. The Colony Garden similarly enters the battlefield tapped and creates a 0/1 plant token. I just simply found this land neat and creates green mana later on. And then we're playing the Tucasios Dig Site, which also adds colorless mana, but can also surveil, so we can mill cards from the top of our library into the graveyard that we currently don't need. But now, I do want to hear from you. What do you think about this deck? The whole deck list is in the description if you want to check it out. There are also like 21 cards that I considered but couldn't fit in. If you would change anything or switch anything out, let us know in the comments. Are there any cards that I missed that you would totally have included in this kind of deck? Let us know in the comments, let's have a nice discussion. Again, click the left button to support the channel and the right one for another beautiful video. There will be a new commander vote out in the upcoming days. Enjoy your day and have a good one. Bye bye.